Hey guys, Jeremy Moore, and I'm going to show you how I'm building this 30 by 40 workshop. I want to show it to you start to finish. Approaching something like this can take many different shapes. I've seen videos where people are spending $35,000 on a shop, $25,000 on a shop. I'm going to spend $6,000 on this shop. A driving factor in all of these videos that you'll see, cost plays a huge role. Like I say, I am not the kind of person who opens the drawer of my toolbox and there's a checkbook. I want you to understand that as I make these decisions, sure, there's going to be people that say those frames look ridiculous. That lumber is going to be, you know, there will be people who critique it. I know there are other options. I'm trying to document an option that says it can be done on a budget that most people think is not possible. You know, you'll realize that you can grow. I've certainly never laid brick, but I had never laid block until I laid the block for this house. I had never cut up lumber. I've never used a bandsaw mill to cut up lumber. Now we have bandsawed lumber. So, you know, there are things that you might say, but I can't. I'm willing to say, I bet you can. You know, even if you have to work by yourself, like I'm doing tonight, you can get a lot of stuff done. You just have to set your mind to just get something done today. Any progress today is progress. So I take small steps. I'm working on this after work, and I really hope that you see that this is doable, that it's going to be fun. I hope it's fun to watch. I'm certainly having a good time putting these videos together. Just to walk you through a little bit, I just want to show you a few of my initial designs. Because it looked a lot different than this. Over the years, this has been a project, like I said, I've been working on the idea, what can I build? The driving factor has always been cost, so I have entertained the thought of a 16 by 24, a 24 by 24, a 24 by 30. But I finally realized, you know, I was stuck in this traditional framing style, and it was leading me to have to buy materials in a way that I had no advantage. You know, if I had to have studs for 16 inches on center, then I had to buy studs, basically. I mean, I couldn't really reclaim lumber. Nobody wants to part ways with straight, long, you know, termite-free lumber, so I would have to buy that. And then, you know, if it was on 16-inch centers, that made the plywood have to be, you know, 4x8 sheets, and then, you know, if I insulated it, that only lend itself to batt insulation or blown-in insulation, and you know, then trusses on 16-inch center, and roof deck plywood again, and shingle. You know, everything was off the shelf, and really, I just didn't have an advantage for saving money in that system, because you know, you don't really stumble across opportunities. And it wasn't until I started thinking about non-traditional or non-residential framing techniques. So what I transitioned to was something that was more similar to these pole barn kits that we're seeing pop up all over, and that included using some open web trusses. My thoughts immediately gravitated to the idea that, hey, I don't even have to buy the kit. I can make the kit. Because now all of a sudden, even though some of the components had to be full length and long and straight, the internal webs between the two cords, they could actually be some salvaged lumber, or, you know, most lumber supply places have coal piles where they throw away either bent or broken, or not bent, but you know, warped lumber. And so you could improvise, and you could cut some otherwise not useful boards into some short sections, and over those short sections, they're straight enough or strong enough, or whatever the case may be, they would certainly work as webbing. And then, you know, I didn't have to make a bunch of these frames. I could make just a few of these frames, and then I would just have to connect between these with some kind of dimensional lumber or purlins that would span the distance, and those could also be things that I could possibly salvage from other places. And so the design was really starting to take a different shape. You know, all of this was intended to be built out of wood, because that was something that I could work with easily. So it certainly was going to look like a home built structure. But then all of a sudden, we were working on this job and had to do some demolition work, had to tear out a roof structure, and it turned out that the roof was supported by a bar joist, and I wasn't there when they were taken down, but I did come up on the job as these were being thrown away, and then all of a sudden the whole design just changed. It really started to take shape, and I realized that I had stumbled onto a treasure that I wasn't going to have to improvise. I wasn't going to have to make. These things were already ready. All I had to do was make it fit the shape that I wanted to. So I immediately drew it up in AutoCAD, put base plates on it, figured out the angles, and I was able to really envision what the final product would look like sitting right there looking at the computer, and was able to dimension all the cuts, make it exactly how I needed to, and thankfully had access to a bandsaw that was able to cut these trusses to those angles, and then I welded on some plates and I was off and running. So it was one thing, I'd finished my framing design, but I had to work to finish the overall design because I really didn't know what the finishes would look like. So I jumped on Pinterest, found a few that really kind of caught my eye, kind of matched what we look like in South Georgia. So this was a barn or workshop that I really liked. It kind of drew from what I had come to admire and like about some of Justin Chambers' work over at the Rainfall Project. Certainly take a look at his work. And I really liked, now that I wasn't stuck with the vinyl siding or plywood or any kind of generic siding, I was able to incorporate some board and batten, and this was something that I could use the lumber from my property.
Here goes! Here goes!
As I got the lumber cut up from the bandsaw mill, I actually was able to get him to saw up some wide planks, and now I have incorporated this into my workshop, and I guess finalizing that design, getting to this point, realizing exactly what the target was that I was shooting for, really started to make things I feel complete, feel ready to start building. Last thing I had to do was generate a set of plans to submit to the building permit office, and so I drew up exactly what I intended to build, gave it some framing, dimensions, and overall look, and at this point I was ready to break ground. Had no problems getting permits, and so I had what I needed, and next thing to do was just start building. I felt like it was probably a good way to end this introductory video just by going over a few things that turned out to be just crucial steps that helped make this project take shape. If I had not changed from the residential type framing to the frame with purlin and girt type structure, I probably still would not be building. From a finishing standpoint, I have options. I can put metal wall panels on this, I can put siding on this, I can do any of the options that, for me, I have an advantage in. There's quite a few metal building component manufacturers locally. A lot of them oftentimes have rejects or coils or returns or damaged or any of the things that they aren't perfect, but at least I have the choice to say, if I don't want to pay full price, I can make use of this. And a lot of times, the roof panels that I was able to purchase, they were damaged. But since they were 25 feet long and I only need 16 feet, the damaged part gets cut off, and so the damage is irrelevant. So if you look for ways to take advantage of the opportunities that are available to you. It may be a lumber supply, it may be metal supply, it may be concrete supply. You never know exactly what things will lean your way, but if you try to look for your advantages and then build your shop based around those advantages, price per square foot just come tremendously in the right direction. So like I said, looking for material supply opportunities is really going to be one of the ways that you just change the whole landscape of the project. I did opt to go ahead and pour the entire slab, but for a building like what I'm trying to accomplish, it's not necessary to have the slab in its entirety from the beginning. You know, had I poured a ring around the outside, I could have attached my structure to that. You certainly want to accommodate for uplift. You know, a lot of people's misconception is that you have to hold these buildings up, but in reality, it's much more a driving factor to actually hold these buildings down. The wind comes through, there's a lot of uplift, so you certainly don't want to attach it just to a minimal foundation, but you know, if you pour a substantial ring around the outside, the concrete on my project is actually going to be half the cost of the entire project, as long as I'm able to stay right around the $6,000 mark. So I would say that I could have poured $1,000 worth of concrete and would have had plenty to have held this structure as it needed to be, and you know, as I could later come back and pour. So that's certainly an option, and that would get your cost considerably down. Had I done that, I feel like I could have built this project for $4,000. I just wouldn't have the slab finished on the inside. The last thing that was an advantage to me, and I certainly want to capture this in some other videos, is you know, living in South Georgia, we have southern yellow pine just everywhere. On my property, I have at least 250 of these mature pine trees growing right here. When I decided to build this in this location, I had to cut down 4 trees. So as soon as I cut them down, I thought, I hate to just pile them up and burn them. I reached out, found a guy that has a portable bandsaw mill. I certainly can give a link to his page, and he would certainly, if you're local, he would certainly be glad to do some work for you. But 35 cents a board foot, I was able to cut up 2x6, 16 foot long for $3.80 a piece. The board and batten siding, 1x12s, again, $3.80 a piece for 16 foot long sections. All of a sudden that changes so many things. All the lumber for my whole project was $650. So between minimalizing your concrete expenses, finding some salvage material to build a frame, taking advantage of you know, some lumber resources that might be available to you, you know, you'll find that those bare essentials for these types of projects, you can really move the needle towards the inexpensive direction with a little bit of effort, a little bit of planning. And hope this first video is encouraging. The next videos will be detailing the lumber development, the fabrication development, the erection, putting things in place, and we'll go from there.